This is Lee Uehara from the House of Lee NYC podcast, and you are listening to the My Stuttering Life podcast hosted by Pedro Pena. So let's get started!
What's up, guys? This is Pedro from My Stuttering Life, where you will hear the good, the bad, the very ugly. We're gonna laugh, we're gonna cry, but through it all, just know that you are not alone. So, let's get started. This is episode number 60, and my special guest is Matt Herdman. Matt Herdman, a creator who lives in Oklahoma, is striving to make positive impacts on the world. He recently had the opportunity to be a speaker at Oklahoma's first ever Next Gen Talks, where he gave a speech, "What Stuttering Taught Me About Anxiety." He graduated with a bachelor's in music with a focus in musical theater, and currently works in marketing in Oklahoma City. In his free time, he enjoys writing, videography, graphic design, reading, and any other way he can express the creative energy inside of himself. I am honored to have him as a guest with me on the My Stuttering Life podcast. Welcome, Matt Herdman.
Hey, Pedro, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome, sir. Thank you for being a guest on this podcast. And in reading your intro, you and I have something in common. You are from Oklahoma?
I am from Oklahoma.
I have family in Oklahoma. We are in Hugo, Fort Towson, Idabel, Broken Bow, and Wright City.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's awesome. I am from Hera. I don't know if you know where that is.
Northeast?
It is going to be east. It's sort of between, if you know where Choctaw is.
Yes.
And Shawnee.
Yes.
Sort of in between those areas. So,
okay.
Yeah.
How cool. Yes. We have a lot of topics to cover, so let's get started.
For sure.
So, do you remember when you first began to stutter?
Yes. So, I am someone who has stuttered on and off for as long as I can remember. I am currently, I feel like in the season where I don't stutter as much as I used to. My dad stutters, and so growing up, it was sort of always this thing that I was around. And yeah, as far back as I can remember, I've stuttered. I remember there would be times where I would be talking to my grandparents and I would be stuttering, or times where I would be like talking to my mom and I would be stuttering, and she would ask me if I was doing something wrong, or there would be times where I would be doing something wrong. And I know that there were times where as a kid you may be in trouble and you don't really know what to say. And so I think there were times where she was like, well, are you stuttering, or you're actually doing something, or something like that. And there's like home video of me being like 5 or 6 years old and someone's asking me a question. I might be stuttering, but yeah, I've stuttered on and off ever since I can remember.
Besides your dad, are there any other people in your family that might also have a stutter?
Not that I am aware of. My dad was really the only one growing up that I knew of in my family who had a stutter. I don't think there's anyone else in my family who has a stutter. Like his brother or his sisters don't. His mom or dad did not. So growing up, that was something that we sort of shared that I didn't really necessarily think about until I got older.
Me too. My mom stuttered, and so I believe she was the only one also. And so growing up, I never, had a concept of, what it was until I got older and was in, speech therapy. And so speaking of speech therapy, did you ever have it in school, and was it helpful?
Yes. And actually, before I go into the speech therapy thing, I actually was thinking about your mom, because I know that you've said a few times that your mom just got to a place where she decided that she didn't want to stutter anymore, and so she just stopped stuttering. And so I was curious, do you know the level of intensity that her stutter was? Like if it was on a scale of 0 to 10, if it was like a 10 and she was able to stop stuttering, or if it was something that she struggled with every now and then. And just what you thought about that.
She had a moderate stutter, so about 5 or 6. And so growing up in South Texas, they always had big families because they had to work on the farm. And so she had difficulty, talking as a teenager. And so I believe it was, I think, 13, 14 years of age, possibly older, where she just told herself, that's it. I'm done. I need to focus on her important life events. And so she just told herself, that's it. I'm done.
Very crazy.
I know, because I don't know genetically, was I going to get it, later in life, or was the dog attack the precursor? It just kind of blows your mind. Would I have had it later, or, it's just crazy.
Absolutely. Yeah. So touching on the speech therapy, whenever I was younger, I would have trouble saying certain sounds. I think it was like S's or F's or one or the other. And so I used to go to speech therapy for that whenever I was really, really young. And then it wasn't until I started public school, so I was homeschooled until 4th grade, that I actually started to see a speech therapist. So a speech therapist that was dedicated for stuttering. And so I saw the speech therapist from regularly from 4th grade until about 6th or 7th grade. And then it was like every other week. And when I say regularly, I mean like once a week. And so I would see them regularly for about once a week. And then from like 7th to 9th grade, I started to seeing them like once every other week. And then from like my freshman year in high school to my senior year in high school, I would check in with them. I think it was maybe like once every 3 months or once a year or something like that, just because it was we feel like everything's going okay, but we just want to make sure that everything seems like it's going okay on your end. So as far as it being helpful, I think maybe subconsciously it was helpful. I don't know if in the moment, just because I was so caught up in stuttering and things like that, and just really sort of stuck in my head a lot of the times, if I convinced myself that it wasn't necessarily helpful. So I think in some ways it was helpful. There were a lot of times where I guess the biggest thing that she would say that would help me a lot would be to slow down, to take a deep breath. And at the time when you are in junior high and you're having a really non-fluent season and you're really frustrated, to sort of take a step back and say, okay, I need to take a breath and I need to just be patient and calm with myself. That's not necessarily something that you're able to do in that moment. But now, being 27 years old, I realize that that's probably one of the things that is helping me the most, is those times when I'm flustered or when I'm not necessarily having the most fluent season, to just sort of take a deep breath and relax. And it's okay if I'm having a day where my speech isn't as fluent as other days.
You were briefly talking about your junior high years. Mm-hmm. And you know how everything hits you as a teenager.
Oh,
you have
oh yeah.
You have the hormones, and then you have the mood swings, and then you may want to get a mohawk and color your hair half purple, half blue. And then you add to it stuttering. It's like, come on, give me a break. So how was high school as a stutterer?
High school, as somebody who stuttered, was, I would say, a lot better than junior high. Junior high was really my experience when my stuttering was my worst. Gratefully, I've never really had an experience where kids would pick on me or anything like that. So I'm really grateful for that. I feel like I was one of those people that was really like friends with everyone, and because I had gone to school for so long with everyone was very aware of my stutter, and it wasn't ever really a thing. It was sort of a thing whenever a teacher would ask me to read out loud if they didn't know that that I had a stutter, and then it was sort of like I mean, I can try. I know how well it's gonna go. In high school, my stutter sort of started to subside a little bit, and so I was doing tech and sound design stuff. Well, not necessarily sound design. I was more so just doing tech for my high school theater department. And so as I was doing that, my stutter sort of started to go down, and so I started to do a speech competition and sort of get into drama and performing, which is something I had always sort of like done at church, just because I was really one of the only guys that would do it, even though I had a stutter. And so as a kid, I would be performing at church, and I would be doing like the Christmas pageant and whatnot, and I would still stutter, but I would still do it. And it was just something that I didn't really like to do because of my stutter, but I also wanted to do it because I enjoyed doing it. And so as my junior and senior year came around and I sort of started to stutter less and less, I realized, you know what, maybe I can try to do this drama thing. So so I started to do that, and it definitely led to opportunities that as a kid I would have never imagined having, but I'm grateful that I got to have. And as far as high school goes, it was pretty good for me. I'm very grateful for the level of fluency that I had throughout high school.
That is just awesome because I think we are twins, Matt, because and let me explain.
Oh yeah.
Let me explain.
Uh-huh.
I'm all through school. I mean, there were all these bullies and, and the mocking and the teasing, and then, I'm eating lunch all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then in high school, I found the drama club. And let me tell you, these awesome group of individuals, they welcomed me in. They did not care that I had a stutter. And so I joined the drama team. And so, I helped out with lighting, I helped out with props. I painted, I helped out with, costumes. And then one day they asked me to be in a play. And so I thought, can I really do this?
Mm-hmm.
And they said, it's the Wizard of Oz, and would you like to be the lion? So, how you're all caught up and it's like, wow, that is awesome. And,
yeah.
And then I say yes. And then when I go home, it's like, what have I done?
Oh yeah. How am I going to be able to do this?
Exactly. And you're just picturing in your mind, you're on stage, and the whole school auditorium is packed.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a blog, and then they're looking at you. And so, that's what was going through my head the whole time. However, you know what? My drama buddies, I mean, they were supportive and they were nurturing, and they said, you got this. And so I practiced my lines, and then on opening night, it was just awesome. It was the best feeling, and that led me, like you, I did speech tournaments on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
Waking up super early.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Oh yeah.
And then you hop on a bus, and then you go to all these different schools. And so I did prose, poetry, and oration.
Okay, awesome.
And so I won a couple of ribbons, third place, fourth place, but our school went to state for one act play.
That's awesome.
And so, I have to just credit the drama club at my high school, Tolosa Midway, ran Morgan High School in Corpus Christi, Texas, that they were just phenomenal. Because had I not done that, I would have never known that, I could do these amazing things.
For sure. Have you performed at all since then?
I have not. However, I still bring that experience with me, to this day. So
For sure.
I am very, very, very grateful to them.
And I mean, if you sort of look at the character of the Cowardly Lion, like the fact that he is looking for his courage and along the way he finds his courage, it's sort of interesting that somebody who stuttered and who had trouble speaking played somebody who was the Cowardly Lion, and then throughout that experience, you seem to find courage from that situation.
You hit it right on the nose. Oh my gosh. It is all about symbolism. I mean,
For sure.
it's so cool.
Yeah. And I did the Wizard of Oz. It's been 6 years or so. I was the Munchkin Mayor, and I was also, I can't think of the Wicked Witch's like right hand monkey, but I was those two, and then I understudied the Scarecrow and the Tin Man, and I may be mistaken, but isn't it sort of written as if the lion does sort of stutter or sort of has somewhat of a stammer throughout some of it?
He does, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you find that you can still recall your lines and, every now and then they just pop in your head?
Pedro, as soon as I am done with the show, it is pretty much gone.
Really?
Oh,
wow.
I mean, if I am rehearsing a show that I've done before, I've done Cabaret now twice. And if you're not familiar with the show, there is this MC character who on Broadway has been played by Alan Cummings. In the movie, as well as the original Broadway production, I believe was played by Joel Grey. Sort of the narrator of the show. The first time that I did it, I understudied the MC. The second time that I did it, I got to be the MC. And so I realized as I was going through the rehearsal process, I remembered the lines easier because I had sort of had them in my head before. So if I'm going back and doing a show, I can sort of recall the lines and it sort of helps me to memorize them. But as far as just being able to pull out from my random bank of my memory, I cannot do that.
Okay, so that's one difference we have as being twins. So, I'll give you that one, Matt. I'll give you that one. Now, let me follow up with, do you think that memorizing all those lines and then you have it in rote memory, do you think that helped you speech-wise?
Yes and no. I will say that I think it's healthy to be in situations that give you a little bit of anxiety every now and then, just because I think that's sort of part of life. I don't know if it's really possible to navigate life without having moments where you're stressed or where you're anxious. So I think that can be good. And I think that performing, there's going to be a little bit of anxiety that goes along with it of I'm standing in front of this crowd of people and they are watching me. And so if I make a mistake, they're going to see the mistake that I'm doing. But I will say that, so I think that that's good because there have been times where throughout my life, whether I'm speaking to one person or 10 people, it's not really going to be a defining factor of am I going to be able to speak or am I going to stutter, because whether there's 10 people or 100 people or one person, I still have the thought in my head of, oh, there's a chance that I may stutter. And I sort of got sidetracked. You said, can you repeat the question for me? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I was just wondering if the rote memory is helpful speech-wise, because there are a lot of people who who stutter, who will practice and practice, and then when they go out and do it, they may have less blocks and more fluency.
For sure. So I think it helps during times where I am maybe performing like a character or like acting as a character in a show. But if there are times where I am just having to be myself and talk as myself, I think if I'm rehearsing something too much in my head to where I sort of have a script outlined, then my brain starts to focus less on what should I say and more that I'm going to stutter. So if I can divert my attention to, let me just focus on what I'm going to say, then my attention dwindles less on, oh, I'm going to stutter. I don't know if that answer makes sense or not.
Yes, it does. It's very interesting. Now, do you have any advice for parents and teachers with regards to children who stutter?
Yes. So I would say the biggest piece of advice is always going to be patience. And I mean, I would say that goes for even if you are not stuttering and you're dealing with something, I think patience is definitely the key for making progress. As far as parents and teachers go, I would say that it really means a lot to the person who is working through whatever they're working through, just giving them as much time as they need. So if it takes them 5 minutes to say a sentence, work on being okay with that. And I sort of touched on it earlier, and it was sort of a joke, so I hope it definitely comes off as a joke. But when I made the comment of, oh, my mom is curious if I have like done something wrong or if I'm like in trouble or something, that was definitely like not anything that she thought in her head of, oh, he's stuttering, so he must be doing something wrong. But I definitely don't want parents to think, oh, because my kid is stuttering to me whenever they're saying the answer to a question, that means that they're lying, because that's definitely not always the case. As far as teachers go, I would definitely say work with the student on helping them to express how to navigate your learning environment with their stutter. So if it's a scenario, like if you're someone who stutters and you're in a speech class, a large portion of your grade, I think, is going to be depending on you giving a speech. So I think for you to right away just say, okay, I can't give the speech because I'm going to stutter, I think you're sort of doing yourself a disservice in that. But I also think the teacher shouldn't say, okay, I'm going to give you an F if you can't stand up there and speak fluently. I think it's being able to work with that student and say, okay, let's figure out something where you can still get your education in this, but you aren't necessarily having to put yourself in this very traumatic experience every week by standing up and giving a speech if that's something that you're not necessarily able to do in that moment. So sort of working with them, figuring out, okay, how can we make this work for you as well as work for everyone else?
That is great advice. And then piggybacking on what you were talking about earlier, how many people will equate stuttering with lying. There have been, a couple of times when I was pulled over, for speeding, and the policeman would equate my stutter with, am I hiding anything? That's when I bring out the card. I don't know if you've heard about this business card that has on there I stutter, and it just goes into what is a stutter and whatnot. When I hand that card over to the policeman, first of all, they apologize. They acknowledge that I have a stutter. I'm not lying. I'm just having a hard time communicating with you. But I'm not hiding nothing. And so I believe it is extremely important that, we educate. We just tell everybody this is what I have. And so if you hear me stutter, I'm not hiding nothing. I just, have a hard time getting words out. That's all.
Absolutely. I actually watched that video. Did you make that card idea, or did you find it somewhere else and then you were sort of telling people about it?
Oh, no, that came from the National Stuttering Foundation. If you email them, they will mail you out a card.
That is very cool. I had never heard of that before, and so when I saw that, I thought that was very, very, very interesting. I'm curious if there are other organizations or other things that have foundations for things that affect your ability to speak that have similar cards. I have a friend who has MG, and stands for myasthenia gravis. I believe that's how you pronounce it. If someone is listening and they know that's not how you pronounce it, please forgive me. And I'm not really going to go into detail about it because she's going to be able to speak on it a lot better than I could. But there are times where it really affects her ability to speak. And I was sort of telling her about that card, and she thought that was really cool. And so, yeah, if there's other foundations for things that sort of affect people's ability to speak and there's not cards, I think that would be a really cool idea.
That would be a phenomenal idea, because going back to it again, it's all about education. My motto is, when you know better, you do better.
For sure.
So during your job years, had you ever experienced employment discrimination because of your stutter? And if so, how did you deal with it?
Thankfully, I have not had to experience that. There have been a few times where my stutter will sort of get in the way of me trying to perform a task or something like that. And there was one time where I was doing this training, and part of the training was that I would be talking on the phone, and there was somebody that called, and I would say quite a bit, because as I've gotten older, I have sort of found springboard words to sort of help me flow into the next sentence. And a really bad habit that I've developed is saying the words and like. I've gotten better at not saying them as much, but it's sort of transformed from me having to use them when I'm stuttering to me just inserting them into everyday speak. But there are times where if I'm stuttering, I'll say or like, and that will help me sort of flow into the next thing that I have to say. And so I was talking on the phone, and there was this person who called, and I had said probably 5 or 6 times, definitely more than I needed to in that moment. And so I get off the phone, and the girl said, "Can you work on not saying or like as many times?" And I said, "Absolutely, I can try, but I do have a stutter, so sometimes that's what I say to help me not stutter." And she goes, "Well, if you can help it, don't do it." And
Wow.
I don't think she realized that it was something that I can't always help. And so I don't know if that necessarily is going to be discrimination, but it was definitely a frustrating moment.
Yes, it is.
Time of working. I'm just going to hope that she just didn't realize what she said.
Yes. Had she said that to me?
Oh, yeah. There have definitely been some times where I'm usually pretty level-headed. I try to, when it comes to my own stuff, if it's involving someone that I know that like it's not me, I'm definitely someone who my fuse can get lit pretty fast. But if it's involving something circulating around me, I'm usually pretty level-headed. Like it takes a lot to get me really frustrated and flustered. But there are times where people will ask me like, "Oh, did you forget your name?" And my response, I will be very straight toned, and I'll say, "No, actually I stutter." And the response from them is usually like tail between their legs, walk away. And there have definitely been some times where I will respond in probably a little bit more sassy way than I need to, but I think it definitely forces them to be like, "Oh, I'm not going to ask someone if they ever forgot their name ever again." So
Okay. Now I know we are twins, because let me tell you. Okay. First of all, I love and likes. For me, it's a tool or to help me bridge over the block, and so I can't tell you, how many times I've heard from, podcasters, "Oh, I never say, that's, the, kiss of death is, and likes." And so I said, I'm the opposite. I really love them, because if it's going to help me get out what I need to get out,
for sure.
I will use as many and likes that I need to accomplish whatever I need to accomplish.
Absolutely.
And then also piggybacking on, did you forget your name? If I had a quarter for every time that happened to me, I would have like 6 luxury cars in my driveway, because Again, it goes to education because I've had to educate them, and thankfully I have a lot of extras of those cards that I also carry with me, in my pocket. And so that way, if it should happen again when they ask me, did I forget my name? I just hand them the card, and just like you just previously stated, they turn red, and they apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry. That way, for the next time, hopefully it will not happen again. But oh yeah, it still happens to me, and I'm 49 years old. So,
I have performed quite a bit, and I have spoken in front of people, and gratefully my speech is in a much more fluent place than it was 5, 10, 15 years or so ago. But nothing raises my anxiety more than to be in a social situation and for all of a sudden someone to say, okay, we're going to go around the room and we're going to introduce ourselves.
Oh no, that's when I leave and go to the restroom. That's how I operate, Matt.
I will say, if they were to say that and then ask me right away, okay, you introduce yourself, I found that I do a lot better than for me to be the last person out of 20 people to introduce myself, because
oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
You're with each person leading up to you. Oh my God, your heart is pounding.
Oh yeah.
Your hands are sweating.
Oh yeah.
And then you dry mouth.
Oh yeah. I feel that.
Oh my gosh. All right. So have you ever in your journey experienced depression because of your stutter? And if so, did you ever seek treatment?
So throughout during junior high, I really sort of started the culmination of me just sort of growing up and having chemical changes and whatnot, as well as my stutter getting to a place to where it was not fluent really at all. I was really having a lot of trouble speaking. I found to really start to battle like anxiety and depression and OCD. And so I definitely went through a period of time whenever I was younger when I really struggled with that. And then now as I've gotten older, so that whole period lasted pretty consistently for about 2 to 3 years. And I really struggled with like self-care and self-harm and sort of going from one problem to solving a problem with another problem to solving a problem with another problem, and seeing counselors and therapists and things like that. And I think that my stutter definitely it wasn't necessarily the cause of the depression, but it definitely contributed to me sort of being in a not great place. And then I would say about 2.5, 3 years or so ago, I started to really struggle with like OCD and obsessive thinking, and I realized that it's something that I've sort of really struggled with my entire life, and I think a lot of it has to do with my stutter. In this scenario, like we sort of talked about previously, of you have 20 people in front of you, maybe you're in a classroom where you are at the end of the classroom and they're going to start reading loud on one side of the classroom, and they're going to go down the row until they get to you, and you have 15 minutes to obsess and worry about how things aren't going to work out, how you're going to stutter, how something's going to happen, how things are going to go wrong. And so as I've gotten older and my speech has become more fluent, I found that I still have that like obsessiveness. And so sometimes there are times where I say that it will really, I think I can sort of use my obsessiveness for good. Like I really like to write and do video stuff and filmography and just sort of create. And there are times where I can obsessively be working on things and sort of be in this like very manic state and just really output a lot of cool content and a lot of just cool art and stuff that sort of can inspire people and like educate people and just like entertain people. And then there are times where I'll be in this obsessive state that just like leaves me really like isolating myself from everyone and like really down and not really in the best place of mind. And so I don't know how much my stutter is necessarily to blame for it, but I definitely think that my stutter has sort of contributed to some things that I've faced in the past and still to this day.
That's great that you can channel it into your art form, and then also reaching out to, getting the help.
For sure.
Because my background when I was younger, my stutter gave me a lot of anger issues, and so in school, no one wanted to hang around the, kid who couldn't talk. And so, basically, in grade school and junior high, I was basically by myself, isolated, going home every day thinking, is this ever going to get better?
Right.
And there was some darkness, although, thankfully I found the light. And so now I just channel that light, because we are all here for a purpose on this earth. This is what I believe in. And so I think we are all a gift. And so, I tell everybody that stutters, you are here for a reason. You are special. You are awesome. And if you are having difficulties, just reach out.
Absolutely.
There are lots of people who can, help you. So
absolutely. I think that I'm grateful that I've gotten to this place now to where I don't know if I'm necessarily someone to say that everything happens for a reason, because I think there are some really bad things that happen to people that I don't think there's necessarily a reason for it to happen. But I think that everything that does happen can ultimately be used for something good. And I'm just sort of trying to figure out what that good thing is that I can use my stutter for. And some days it seems like it's one thing, some days it seems like it's another thing. But yeah.
Right. I totally agree. Now, I'm a little older than you are. And so have you ever heard of that artist, Gloria Estevan?
Yes, I have. There's a Broadway musical called On Your Feet that is actually.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Well, one of her all-time hits is the Rhythm is Gonna Get You. And so it has Pedro, because when I'm talking, let's say I have a block. To help me get over that block, I will either tap my leg or I will tap my foot. I may have my arms go all up in the air, like I just don't care. And, I may have my eyes open and close, and close.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever done that? The tapping to, help you get over a block?
I have not done that, but I'm sure it sort of is along the same lines of, like, you're focusing on that, and so you're less focusing on, oh, am I going to stutter in this scenario? But I can totally see how that would work.
And it does work, but I mean, I'm just all over the place. That's just me.
Whatever you got to do sometimes.
Exactly, because life goes on. So what is your most effective technique that you do to help you with your fluency?
So I would say breathing and just slowing down. There are times where I will catch myself stuttering and I'll sort of realize, oh, I'm speaking really fast. So I don't know if those things necessarily always go hand in hand, but I do know the times when I am sort of just like staying calm and breathing and just taking my time, even though it may sometimes sound like I'm speaking really slow. I've realized that it probably just sounds like a normal speech pattern. So I would definitely say breathing and just taking my time to relax.
Those are great, because I also use breathing, diaphragmatic breathing. And so that has truly helped me out during, many of my fluency struggles. So this next topic, I know I have the answer to, but can you sing?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's in musical theater. So I would definitely say I'm an actor over a singer, but my voice has improved, and I can carry a decent tune. I believe.
See, because many people have asked me, would it be easier to not talk to me, but to sing to me? And so I say no. I'm not going to sing to you. I'm just going to get it out however I need to get it out.
There we go. I'm not sure what the device is called, but in junior high, whenever my speech got to a place where it really wasn't super fluent, I got one of those little devices that you put into your ear, and it has a microphone on it. And so it plays back, it hears your audio that you're speaking, and it plays it back at a higher pitch and a sort of delayed response time. And I mean, I think it would work for some people. It didn't really work for me, but I sort of found out about that around the same time when I found out about, you're not going to stutter if you sing. Like, it's just not really something that happens. Or if you're speaking with people, you're not really stuttering or things like that.
Right. Did that device have like a choral effect?
It didn't really have a choral effect. My friend at the time called it, she said, like the chipmunk in my ear, because it played it back at quite a bit of a higher frequency, and it was just your voice. So if other people were talking, you couldn't hear them. Now, if they were talking loud enough, then it would pick them up. But it was like a half-second delayed response that was definitely a few octaves higher than your current speaking.
Okay.
Yeah. So depending on how long your sentence was, it may be making noise at the same time that you are also making noise.
Okay. They say that it's much easier to speak in a group.
Right.
If you stutter, which I found for me to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Because during church, how you recite the prayers.
Absolutely.
I have no problems whatsoever. I'm with everybody else. It's just kind of cool.
For sure.
Now, let me ask you a very hot topic. Now,
okay.
There are many, many hot topics, revolving around people who stutter, but here is one of the main ones. So, do you let other people finish your sentences?
So there have been a few people who have asked me, when you're stuttering, do you want me to say what you're gonna say if I know what you're gonna say, or is that something you don't want me to do? So there have been a few people that I have had that conversation with, and I tell them if I am really having trouble saying something, or if I'm at a restaurant and I'm really having some trouble and you know what I'm trying to say, you are more than welcome to say what I'm going to say. Because for me, I am sort of along the lines of, I'm just trying to communicate with the person as efficient as possible. And so if we have had that conversation and I feel like I'm comfortable with you to where that's okay, then yes, that's okay. But if we haven't had that conversation, I don't really want people doing that, just because I do believe that they have good intentions behind it, but I would just like to, sometimes in my head, because I haven't had that conversation with the person, I guess I'm sort of thinking, well, are they saying that because they are wanting to help me, or are they saying that because they're just not being patient enough to listen to what I'm trying to say? So they're probably just trying to help me, but it's something that I'm okay with if I've had that conversation with someone.
That's a very valid answer, because that has also happened to me previously when I was younger, and they would try to finish mine. That would anger me. But, now that I am older, and so like you, I appreciate them asking me, because I will tell them, I said, oh, heck yeah. I want you to help me, help you, help me, because I don't want to pass out again, because, that's a whole other podcast.
Oh, yeah.
There have been times when I have a block, I close my eyes, for for the length of the block. And then, there may be sometimes where I get a little dizzy, maybe lose some consciousness. And so if you know what I'm trying to say, and then if you ask me, oh, heck yeah, I mean, that is fantastic to help you, help me, help you. So I encourage everybody, if you know what I'm trying to say, by all means, I would thoroughly appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I will say, I will make an exception if I am like ordering something at a restaurant and if I'm trying to say water and if I'm having trouble saying water and if they're politely like, oh, would you like water or something like that, then I'm not going to be like, oh, you shouldn't finish my sentence, or I don't know. I'm not going to necessarily be upset about that. But if it's just me and someone having a conversation and they're trying to complete what I'm trying to say or something along those lines, then I might be a little bit more flustered or frustrated along those lines.
Yes, I completely agree, because what I do to use a Texas word, I choose restaurants that have pictures on the menu.
There we go.
Because after a long day of blocks and just holding your breath, and I just enjoy going to a restaurant and there are pictures on the menu. Oh, it is fantastic. I just point. That's what I want.
Have you ever, I don't know if you're like me in the sense of there are some words that cause you more trouble than other words, or depending on how strenuous that the sound can be or how much energy that it takes to say the sound, it may block you up more than a softer sounding word. There have been times where what I'm ordering is depending on the word that I'm able to say the most fluently.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And it's, I mean, and to go a step further, when I'm in an elevator and when I hop on and when they ask me what floor, and I can't say the floor that I want to go, but I give a number that I can say. And so I rattle that out.
That's pretty funny, Pedro. I've never thought about that, but that's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's just my life, Matt,
I guess you can say a floor that's going to be underneath yours, so that way you could get a little bit of exercise in the process as well.
Oh,
and then you can sort of use it to your advantage.
Let me tell you, I have a hard time with my S's, and so I have an easier time with the letter N, and so instead of getting out on the 6th floor, which I wanted, I will say 9, and so that.
That's a lot of exercise.
But I get all my steps in, so there's always a silver lining.
That's awesome.
So let me ask you this. So how do you handle having a bad speech day? Because, we have our good days and we have our bad days, but how do you handle having a bad speech day?
I would say that now I'm sort of in this place to where I realize I'm going to have good days and I'm also going to have bad days. And that if I'm having a bad day, that's okay. Just try to do what I know how to do in that moment. And that the bad day will come to an end. So I guess like a light at the end of the tunnel technique.
Now, how do you celebrate having a good speech day?
I am someone who am not always the best at celebrating a win. Like, as soon as something is done and I've accomplished something, there are times where I'm like, okay, what's the next thing? And so I guess the answer would be not the best right now, but I'm definitely working on trying to live in that accomplishment. So it's something that I'm working on, and I'm definitely getting better at sort of saying, okay, you did a good job. You can celebrate the thing that you've accomplished.
How cool. Because it is, for me, each time I have a win, that builds up my momentum for the next day.
Absolutely.
That way, when I have a win and a win and a win, I'm like, oh, I'm doing awesome. And so do y'all have a Dairy Queen in your area?
We so
or
we have
Brahms?
we have Dairy Queens in Oklahoma. We are there's not a Dairy Queen that's super close to me. The closest one is probably like 30 minutes or so away. But we definitely have lots of Brahms. I went through over like Christmas time. I went through a big Brahms kick. So if you've never had one of their cherry limeades, you need to experience that.
That is, yes. When I go to Oklahoma, we always go to a Brahms because they have great ice cream, and so that's how I celebrate my win. So
There we go. If you like Brahms food, they have a Brahms sauce that's pretty tasty.
they have wonderful hamburgers. Oh
Yeah,
wow!
yeah, they do. I've never really been a big hamburger person, but the last like 3 months, I have just completely indulged in the hamburger world.
So let me ask you another hot topic. So how's dating as a stutter? Because dating is hard enough, for everybody, but if you have a stutter, it's like 10 times harder. How do you handle dating with having a stutter?
So I've not played the dating game a whole lot. People that I have dated in the past have always been really good about my stutter, and they've really, as I have sort of gone through the dating world, I have been really lucky to be with people who are those type of people that say, well, do you want me to finish your sentences or things like that, and are always usually pretty patient with me. It's always really cool whenever I sort of click with someone and they know how to respond in a situation when I'm stuttering, and if I'm stuttering, they're not looking at me like they feel sorry for me, but they're looking at me like they're eager and waiting for the next thing that I have to say. I think that whether it be like a dating relationship or a friend relationship or a family relationship, I think that's always really cool whenever people respond in that way.
Right. Because what I tell people is that you know the heart wants what it wants. It doesn't care if you stutter. It doesn't care if you have a lisp. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely. I will say it's always there have been times where, whether it be like a romantic relationship or a friend relationship or a family relationship, where I'll be arguing with someone and it seems like it will diffuse the situation pretty quickly, because if I'm arguing with someone, and I start to stutter, it's not necessarily, I don't know how to put it. Like it's not to argue with someone who is having trouble speaking. I feel like it just diffuses the situation pretty quickly, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Now, what do you think about all this new technology out there? You have Google Home, you have Alexa. Do you think that it's helpful or hurtful to people who stutter?
I like technology. I definitely feel like we're sort of in this place where we rely on it a lot. There are definitely some times where it's nice to be able to lay in my bed and I say, oh, did I set my alarm? And I can say, hey Siri, what time is my alarm set for? And so that's nice and convenient. I think sometimes we have to be careful in not relying on it too much. Like sort of like how I said earlier, I think it's okay to sometimes be in anxious scenarios, just because I think that's part of life. So I think that we just have to be aware of how we're using it, and if there's times where you're just having really non-fluent days, I think it's okay to say, okay, let me take out the notepad on my phone, and this person that I'm having trouble trying to communicate with, let me write out how I'm feeling or write out what I'm trying to communicate, and we can sort of communicate that way. I think that's okay.
How cool. Many people have told me that they use it to, practice, because it's not really a human being, it's a robot.
Absolutely.
So, speech-wise, what is a challenge that you had to overcome, and how did you do it?
So, definitely as far as like my biggest challenge with my stutter, it was definitely like throughout junior high, I really struggled with that a lot. Something recently that I did was I got to give a speech back in October that was sort of centered around my stutter, and some things that I've learned from that. And there were definitely some times throughout the process where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know how it will be received. I don't know if it's going to turn out the way that I want it to turn out. So that would definitely be a recent challenge that I had some time where there were times where I just told myself, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. But then when it was all said and done, I was like, okay, awesome, I did it. And now I have this really cool thing to show for it.
How cool. Now, what has stuttering taught you?
So stuttering has taught me that it is okay to just like listen and observe in a situation. It's really taught me patience. It's taught me sort of like how I touched on earlier, that you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And both of the ways that you feel in either of those days are completely valid, and it's okay to feel good and it's okay to feel not so good. But realize that those feelings are going to pass. So if you're in a time where you're not having the best season or things are feeling frustrating, that's okay. Acknowledge how that makes you feel, and then try to focus on there will come a time where I'll be in a season where I'm more fluent or where things are feeling better.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. In the, same realm, stuttering has taught me courage.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And it has taught me empathy, because I can now put myself in other people's shoes. And so, that has helped me tremendously, later in life.
That's very cool. I think, I definitely agree with you with the whole courage scenario, because it is, even if you are standing in front of 20 kids in 6th grade and you're having to give a book report, and even if you're stuttering the entire time, I think being able to then go back to your desk, no matter how awkward you may feel, I think you should be proud of the fact that you did something that you didn't think you would be able to do. And even if you feel like you failed, I think it's important to acknowledge that the fact that you failed means that you tried. And I think that's the part that matters, and that's the part that decides if you failed or succeeded.
Yes, 100%. And so what advice would you give to another person who stutters?
So sort of like I just said about that it's important to be patient with yourself, and to realize that if you're not super fluent in this current season, that's okay. There will be seasons where you'll be more fluent in, and to just sort of deal with it and process it as it comes. I have always had a really hard time throughout my life about like worrying about future scenarios. So like sitting in a class and worrying about, when it comes to my time to read aloud, I'm not going to be able to stutter. And I wish that there were times where I would have said, you know what, even if I stutter, that's okay. So I think if you stutter and if you're worried about, I'm not going to be able to speak in this scenario, then that's okay if you stutter in that scenario. I would say don't try to necessarily get hung up on that, which is definitely a lot easier said than done. But if you stutter, and that's okay. But who knows, you might surprise yourself.
Right. I 100% agree with that. That is great advice. Now, let's say you were on the world stage and you had the opportunity to tell the world, to give them insight onto what is stuttering. What would you say?
So I would say that stuttering has taught me a lot about interacting with people and communicating with people. I would say that what I would tell them would be probably less about stuttering directly and more what I've learned. And I think what I've learned is how important it is to sit and listen to people, and not in a way where you are waiting to say the next thing that you're waiting to say, but where you're actively taking in what they're saying. I sort of feel like we're in this time where everyone is fighting to get their message across. And I think it would be really cool to see what would happen if people would just sit back and say, okay, I'm just going to hear the story that you have to tell, and I'm going to try and connect to you in my response, and not try and give a rebuttal or just try and tell my own side. So yeah, I think actively listening and just patience. And I think those would be my two biggest things.
That would be a great message to just get out there, because I can't tell you how important it is for everybody to just listen. I mean, that just plays a huge part in all of this.
Absolutely.
I would like to thank you for sharing your story, because I believe there's healing in sharing. I think you are awesome, Matt. I think you are just hashtag courageous, hashtag inspiration. And so I have like the best listeners in the world. Let's say one of them wanted to reach out to you. How would they do that?
So I have recently started a website over the last few months, matthewherdman.com. It's sort of my, I don't want to say like dumping ground, but it's sort of, I'm using it as like a portfolio. So any sort of past video project that I've worked on, I'll put that on there. Any sort of big future project that I'm working on, there's a few things that I'm doing, I'll put that on there. I am really into writing, and so I'm trying to write more. And so I've started blogging at least once a month. Hopefully it'll turn into twice a month, but right now it's just once a month. So there is matthewherdman.com. I have started TikTok over the last few months, and so I really enjoy sort of creating this sort of like social content type of social content type of material. And so I've been doing that. I do YouTube occasionally. But yeah, I would say probably matthewherdman.com is going to be the best resource. There's like a contact form on there, and you can reach out to me and whatnot.
Okay, great. We will have the link in the show notes. And so I just have to say how awesome it is to have you all on social media, YouTube and TikTok, because I am on TikTok.
Awesome.
But I only have one video, but I mean, it has been extremely positive. What have been the responses on your TikTok?
So I've been very surprised at as far as feedback on my content, as well as what I will see on other people's content. I started sort of indulging in social media during like the MySpace Zanga days. So if you are not familiar with MySpace was sort of the big thing before Facebook. And then Facebook, once it opened up to where you did not have to have a university email address to join, it sort of started to explode and take on the scene. And so during that time, throughout like the MySpace days, and then as YouTube was becoming more popular, I feel like it's been very common for social media to sort of have this very like toxic environment. And I have seen a little bit of that on TikTok, but I think that we're now sort of in this day and age where people are wanting to go to social media and they're not necessarily wanting to be surrounded with that type of stuff. And I think that TikTok is sort of one of the places that we're seeing that on. And so as far as my feedback goes, I've gotten really positive feedback. I feel like it is their algorithm's really interesting. I think the way that the app is designed is really interesting. But overall, I've received some pretty positive feedback, and I feel like everyone is, well, not everyone. I'm sure there are people that are not, but I feel like a lot of the people that I've seen on there, they are sort of there to just like have a good time and sort of create this sort of encouraging environment. And so that's really refreshing and really cool.
See, and you bring up MySpace. I had a MySpace back in the day.
Oh yeah.
But thankfully I've migrated. And so to just piggyback on what you were talking about with, TikTok, you have out there, those who will be harsh critics, but like what you were talking about, my comments have been positive, and so I thought, wow, that is just awesome.
Yeah, I have seen some really it's very cool to see somebody post a video and to see so basically with how their algorithm works is when you post a video, it's shown to roughly 150 to 400 people, and depending on how they interact with their video, with your video, it then goes to a larger pool of people, and depending on how they interact with it, it goes to a larger pool of people, and so on and so on and so on. And so you can see some videos that will sort of pop off that hasn't really happened on social media in a long time, just because of how the algorithm for TikTok is built. And so you'll see videos where somebody will post something and the comments are just really, really positive. Of course, there's always going to be some people that aren't being positive and that are being somewhat negative and just are, I would say but that like are bullying in a way. But the outpour of the positive comments that will then come in and say, why are you speaking to this person this way? You shouldn't be saying that. Ignore the hashtag haters. Don't worry about what other people think. It's just really encouraging.
Right. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Yeah. TikTok has been very rewarding for me on, raising awareness for, people who stutter. And so, I wanted to just reiterate, thank you for spending your weekend time with me. I know you have a busy schedule. And so I hope that this will not be the last time, because you are just fantastic. This has been a great conversation. And so, I look forward to many more down the road.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I do as well. Anyone who's listening that wants to be on Pedro's podcast, you should reach out to him because he's very, very nice.
Okay, sir. I'll be paying you for that. Maybe Lamborghini or a Tesla. So, All right, sir. Thank you so much. You take care and be well.
No problem. You as well, Pedro.
If you like this podcast, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Subscribe, rate, and review. Thank you for listening, and we will talk again.